Let's just think of a comparison between Black Lives Matter and Antifa on the one hand and the alt-right on the other hand. Black Lives Matter and Antifa are at least 100 times more effective than the alt-right. They're at least 100 times more cohesive than the alt-right. After Donald Trump's election, the alt-right directed almost all its fire on each other. That's not happened with Antifa and Black Lives Matter. I can't think of hardly anyone who's fighting within Black Lives Matter or fighting within Antifa. So the left seems like it's far more effective. They bring people together and they organize them and they provide them a way of expressing themselves and they get along. The alt-right just does not get along. They basically hate each other. And so why is the left so much more effective? Why is Black Lives Matter and Antifa so much more effective than the alt-right? Also, it seems people on the right to be as rabid and as intense and as dedicated as people on the left. If you're on the right, you're probably traditional and you're probably religious. And so you probably spend most of your time earning a living and being with your family and being with your friends and being with your community. And politics is just, it's just not much time in your life. So the right has children, the left less likely to have children, therefore they have more time. So one reason that homosexuals are so accomplished is that generally speaking, they don't have kids, so they have more time to go pursue their interests. Now, this also means that I think that the trads and the religious and the right, I think, are reproducing more than the left. And so to a certain extent, leftism, and certainly some of its variations, such as transgenderism, is not going to reproduce. So I suspect that trads are going to reproduce, and people who are so intense about politics and devoting so much time to politics, I suspect that they're going to be less likely to reproduce than less politically intense people on the right who are probably going to have 4 kids. If you've got 4, 5, 6, 7 kids, you're simply not going to have time or resources for political agitation. If you are all out about political agitation, then you're probably not raising many kids.
An issue, of course, before we move on, is that lots of kids from conservative households, religious or otherwise, wind up on the left. The right loses more people to the left than the left loses to the right. And that's actually nothing new. It goes back to at least the 1960s. I was reading an old study about that. So it's kind of fascinating how all this has come to be, as well as the implications it has for the future of American politics.
Yeah, and another thing, I think the rhetoric and the thinking of the civil rights movement, as Christopher Caldwell pointed out, essentially gave us a second constitution that superseded the
Yes.
first constitution.
Mhm.
So now, really, the only acceptable prism through which to see the world is equality, refining and developing and strengthening civil rights protections. So somehow the left won on civil rights, and that's become the only socially acceptable prism through which to view many of these issues. So, for example, the right-wing perspective on transgenderism is that these people are mentally ill, but that is a socially unacceptable thing to say on social media and in polite society. The right-wing position is that different peoples have different gifts. That's a socially unacceptable way of talking about different educational and economic attainments by different groups. So somehow the left has been able to seize the high ground so that right-wing perspectives are considered out of bounds